Today I'm reviewing Boris Flood. Flood is one song that is an hour and 10 minutes that's kind of broken up into four separate parts. Conceptually, you would have never guessed that Flood is about a flood. I know, it's fucking crazy. And that's where the separate parts come in. While it is one song that's an hour and 10 minutes, I'm gonna be honest, I feel like it's a bit of a gimmick. I think the parts broken up are pretty distinguishable from each other and work as separate parts to kind of the idea that I have of the album. Obviously, I think everybody knows it's probably about a flood. Music is supposed to kind of represent that, but how you interpret the story or the flow of it is up to you. For me personally, I think part one is very much like we're watching the water and maybe there's like a boat or some fishermen or something, and it's the forming of the storm. It's kind of the calm part in the beginning with just the single guitars is the water itself, and then as it gets more and more with the thumping noise until it builds, that kind of acts as the storm, the tsunami forming in the ocean away from what it will eventually destroy. And then for me, part two kind of works as we are seeing the other side of the story. We see the town or city or whatever that is going to be destroyed by the flood before the flood comes. And that's why I like part two, because it's much more laid back, it's more relaxed, and in my opinion, it makes me think of like a city. We're kind of witnessing life in this city before something bad happens to it. And then maybe towards the second half of it, it's like people are getting the flood warning or whatever, the tsunami warning, and some people are packing, some people are bunkering down and whatnot. And then part three, of course, is the climax of the album. It's the tsunami finally reaching the town and the other destruction. It's also, I think, in the beginning, the kind of chaos that causes the town to kind of get stirred up over the warning of a tsunami, and then eventually the chaos and the destruction and the eventual sort of fallout near the end. And then, of course, part four is the aftermath. You could say like it's the water flowing through the town and then just kind of panning back to the ocean. And I think the album does a really good job to kind of put you in the mindset and think of like, how is the music the flood? The first three parts are beautiful. I think they work so well together. First part is insanely fucking slow, but I think that's good because it helps build the kind of mood we're going for and kind of set a tone for that part that the next parts will completely diverge from, but not like in a kind of out of nowhere way, in a way that makes sense. And I think part two works well because, again, for me and my idea of this album, it's a contrast to part one, and it just continues this very soothing mood as we know something is looming above us while we listen to part two, because we heard it at the end of part one. Part three works as kind of this amazing climax where the storm finally meets the town. Part three is the only part with actual lyrics in it, and I don't know what they're saying, but it adds kind of it helps to add sort of more and make it stand out from the rest of the parts, and it's my favorite part by far. Incredibly heavy compared to the tracks before it, and it really does feel like a tsunami. It feels like a flood. Who would have fucking thought? Part four, however, I'm gonna be real, I really do not fuck with. I think part four kind of fucks with how hard part three hit. Part four is the longest part of the song, part of the album, and it's around 21 minutes, and it really does not need to be this long. I'm aware that the album is part of the drone genre, and maybe that genre just is not for me. But part four does not need to be as long as it is. It's kind of the come down from the tsunami, and it's supposed to kind of leave you contemplating what you just heard, what the flood was and whatnot. The final part of Flood, part four, is broken up into two parts. The first part where it has this kind of like droning notes playing while there's kind of just noise, and then the second half, which kind of sounds like waves or just air flowing. Both of them could have been like half as long as they are. They're both around 10 to 11 minutes. Both of them could have been like 6, and it would have been way better. It would have been like 12 minutes, and I think it would have ended the album on a lot better note. Because for me, the final part being so long really just kind of takes away from how climactic and how insane the part three was and how it built. Overall, though, the album is really good, and it's a really interesting experience and unlike any other album I've ever heard. And I highly recommend you check it out. It is pretty long, and I do think the outro is not that good. It's really not. Part four is by far the worst part on this album, and it doesn't help the album in any way. I do think there needs to be kind of a come down from part three, but it did not need to be as long as part four is. And I think it just makes part three weaker and takes away from it. But fucking part three is amazing. I love it. I like the other two parts. I think they work really well to build up to part three. And I think it works as a really good explosion of everything that we've been hearing before it. So I'm going to give Flood by Boris an 8 out of 10. That's what I think about the album. What do you guys think about the album? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Tell me in the comments below, or say some other shit. It doesn't really matter. Thank you for watching, and have a good day.